Part 1. The frequency you forgot you were broadcasting. It began in silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that creeps in when everything you've used to distract yourself suddenly disappears. Maybe you were sitting alone, phone off, distractions gone, and something stirred inside you. A heaviness, a presence, an eerie stillness that felt almost too intimate. That was the first crack in the veil, the moment you started to sense that there's more happening in your energetic reality than you've been told. And in that moment, whether consciously or not, you sent out a signal, a vibration, and something responded. Most of us have no idea that we are always broadcasting. Every thought, every emotion, every belief is an energetic frequency. It's not metaphor, it's literal spiritual law. You are a transmitter. And the frequency you emit doesn't just affect your mood or your aura, it shifts the very entities you attract. Just like a radio station tunes into a specific type of music, your vibration tunes you into specific types of spiritual presences. And this is where we must look deeper than what we've been taught. Because the relationship between your vibration and demonic interference is not rooted in religion, it's rooted in resonance. Let's be honest, the word demon has been so abused, so misunderstood, that many people either fear it blindly or dismiss it entirely. But what if we could strip away the superstition and look at this through the lens of spiritual physics? Demons, in their most primal form, are frequencies, entities that sustain themselves on specific vibrational states: fear, shame, rage, despair, self-hatred. They are drawn not to your words, but to your wavelength. You don't have to call them by name. You just have to vibrate in their realm long enough for them to notice.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is the hidden link we all must confront. Demons don't attack randomly. They gravitate toward matching frequencies. If you're stuck in cycles of self-loathing, if you're constantly replaying narratives of unworthiness, if you're immersed in jealousy or vengeance, you're not just feeling emotions, you're echoing their home frequency. And when you do that long enough, you become spiritually legible to them. You light up on their radar. And they don't need to force their way in, they simply slide into the openings you've already created through vibrational agreement. You might ask, but what if I didn't choose these emotions? What if I was hurt, traumatized, abandoned? That is fair. That is real. Pain is not demonic. But unprocessed pain, when allowed to ferment into bitterness, victimhood, or chronic resentment, that becomes fertile ground for lower entities. Not because you're bad, but because you're unguarded. And this is the tragic irony. The very wounds that should awaken your power often become portals for your oppression if you don't learn how to transmute them. We live in a world that teaches us to manage symptoms, but not energy. We are taught to take pills for sadness, to vent anger without understanding its root, to chase dopamine instead of stillness. But no one teaches us that energy unprocessed, unobserved, unhealed becomes magnetic. And that magnetism doesn't just attract situations, it attracts beings. Have you ever had a week where everything seemed to go wrong, your mind spiraling, your sleep disturbed, your interactions filled with conflict, and you couldn't explain it? That's not bad luck. That's energetic invitation. Here is where the awakening truly begins, when you realize that your vibration is your responsibility. Not in a self-blaming, toxic positivity kind of way, but in a sovereign, sacred kind of way. You are not helpless. You are not a victim to unseen forces, but you are a creator of your energetic field. And as a creator, you must become conscious. Because what you allow yourself to dwell in emotionally becomes your spiritual address. And entities, whether benevolent or malevolent, visit based on location. Let's go deeper. Demons are not interested in your possessions. They are interested in your permission. And permission is not always verbal. Sometimes it's energetic. Sometimes it's subtle. When you chronically entertain thoughts like "I'll never be free," "I'm worthless," "this is just who I am," you're not just thinking, you're declaring. You're forming contracts. And the spiritual realm honors contracts, even the unconscious ones, especially the unconscious ones. That's why we must become radically honest with ourselves. What have you agreed to vibrationally? What patterns do you keep repeating, not because they serve you, but because they feel familiar? Familiarity is seductive. But many of us are familiar with frequencies that destroy us because they were imprinted in childhood, reinforced by trauma, normalized by society. And if we don't consciously shift those frequencies, we stay locked in spiritual ecosystems where demons thrive. Not because we're cursed, but because we're out of tune. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to carry a heaviness with them? Not just emotionally, but spiritually? You feel it in their presence. You sense it in their eyes. It's not just depression. Sometimes it's energetic occupancy. When we stay in low vibrations long enough, we create space for entities to attach. And these attachments don't always look like possession. They often look like chronic fatigue, irrational fear, self-sabotage, addiction, or sudden emotional outbursts that feel foreign. These are signs that your vibration is no longer yours alone. And here's the kicker: raising your vibration is not about being happy all the time. It's about being authentic. Real joy is not the absence of shadow, it's the integration of it. When you face your pain, when you process your anger, when you sit with your grief without judgment, you elevate your vibration. Why? Because you reclaim your energy. You stop leaking power into avoidance and denial. And when you reclaim that power, your frequency becomes less hospitable to low-level entities. So let's get practical. How do you take responsibility for your vibration? First, by observing without judgment. Notice your emotional patterns. Notice what triggers you. Notice what drains you. Awareness is the first step to vibration mastery. Second, cleanse your energetic field daily, not just with sage or incense, but with intention. Speak aloud, "I release all energies that are not mine. I reclaim my space. I reset my frequency to truth." Your voice carries vibration. Use it. Next, stop feeding the signal. Every time you replay the story of your pain, you energize the frequency that attracted interference in the first place. You're not denying your story, you're choosing what to amplify. Your vibration is shaped not just by what happens to you, but by what you focus on, what you repeat, what you meditate on, even unconsciously. If you obsess over injustice, you vibrate in anger. If you obsess over betrayal, you vibrate in mistrust. And the entities that feed on those frequencies rejoice because you're doing their work for them. Let's flip the script now. What happens when you raise your vibration consistently? You become a threat, not to people, to patterns, but to systems of control, to energetic parasites. Your clarity becomes armor. Your peace becomes repellent. Your joy becomes rebellion. And demons don't know what to do with someone who no longer matches their frequency. They can't attach to what doesn't resonate. They can't influence what doesn't respond. And they can't survive in the presence of sustained authenticity. So I ask you right now, what are you radiating? What frequency are you normalizing in your life? What energies have you unintentionally welcomed because you assumed your thoughts weren't spiritual? Your thoughts are sacred. Your emotions are electric. Your field is alive. And you are not just a participant in this reality, you are a generator. You're not here to just protect your vibration. You're here to elevate it so high, so pure, so grounded, that anything not aligned with truth simply falls away. And if you've been under attack, if you've felt entities around you, if you've sensed a presence you can't explain, don't panic. That's not a sign you're doomed. That's a sign you're awakening, because you're becoming aware of the unseen. And awareness is the first vibration of freedom. Are you ready to reclaim your frequency? Are you ready to stop sending mixed signals to the spiritual realm? Are you ready to become so aligned in vibration that only truth can find you? Part 2. The frequencies that feed shadows. There's a moment on the spiritual path that most people never talk about. It's not the moment you awaken. It's not the moment you reach bliss. It's the middle, the space in between forgetting and remembering. This is the space where your frequency is shifting, but your environment hasn't caught up. You begin to vibrate differently, but the residue of your old life still clings to you. Old thoughts, old habits, old energies. And in that in-between space, the shadows become louder. Not because you're failing, but because you're becoming detectable to the unseen forces that once comfortably fed on your unconsciousness. This is the part of the journey where many spiritual seekers get attacked. Not because they're weak, but because they're emitting a new frequency. And that frequency disrupts the equilibrium of the demonic. You're no longer asleep, but not yet fully sovereign. You're in transition, and entities thrive in transition. They look for instability. They wait for confusion. Because confusion is a frequency too. And when your mind and energy are scattered, your field becomes porous. You leak light. You lose coherence. And that incoherence is a beacon. The hidden link between your vibration and demonic presence becomes painfully obvious when you start to examine your daily energetic diet. What are you feeding yourself emotionally, mentally, spiritually? What are you consuming through media, music, conversations? These inputs are not just information, they are invitations. When you binge on content that glorifies fear, violence, chaos, or despair, you're not just being entertained. You are tuning your frequency to the station demons frequent. This isn't superstition. This is spiritual science. Your vibration cannot lie. You can say the right affirmations, light the right candles, even wear sacred symbols, but if your inner frequency is still vibrating with bitterness, jealousy, superiority, or shame, that's the signature the spirit world responds to. The light realm and the dark realm don't care about your performance. They care about your resonance. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was off, even when everyone was smiling? That's frequency. And entities, especially demonic ones, operate the same way. They don't care what you say. They care what you vibrate. Let's go even deeper. Trauma, when unhealed, becomes a frequency loop. It's not just a memory, it becomes a tone, an echo, a pulse that affects everything. And here's where it gets dangerous. Demons don't need to create new pain. They just need to keep you looping in the old one. They whisper thoughts that sound like your own. They replay old wounds in your dreams. They trigger emotional flashbacks. Why? Because every time you re-enter the trauma loop without awareness, you lower your vibration. You regress. And with each regression, they gain strength. This is why healing isn't optional, it's protective. When you heal a wound, you don't just feel better emotionally. You close a portal. You seal an entry point. You reclaim a frequency that was previously hijacked. And that reclamation sends a signal that tells the spiritual realm, I am no longer available for energetic feeding. That's why so many people feel resistance when they try to heal, because healing is not just psychological work. It's spiritual warfare. We often think of demons as external, but many of the most persistent ones live inside our vibration through agreements. Internalized self-hatred, internalized powerlessness, internalized guilt. These are not just emotions, they are energetic contracts. And every time you repeat them, you reinforce the agreement. You give that entity permission to stay. That's why inner work must include revocation. You must speak with authority. I break every agreement I made with this lie. I cancel every contract that does not serve my sovereignty. I release every frequency that is not mine. Your voice is vibration, and vibration is law. In the spiritual realm, words are not just communication, they are activation. That's why incantations, mantras, prayers, and declarations hold power. But only when they are aligned with your true frequency. If you speak words of light but live in shame, the vibration is incoherent. And incoherence weakens spiritual force. That's why many people say affirmations but see no results, because their subconscious frequency is still vibrating the opposite. And it's the subconscious that the spirit world reads. You must learn to become the guardian of your frequency. Not just occasionally, but daily. This means becoming hyper-aware of what you allow into your field. Not from paranoia, but from power. You begin to notice how your energy changes around certain people. You observe how certain conversations lower your vibration. You recognize how certain environments feel energetically sticky. And instead of rationalizing it, you honor it. You trust your frequency more than you trust appearances. Because your vibration is your compass and it never lies. There's a reason why demons hate stillness. Stillness is the space where you begin to hear your true frequency. It's where the noise fades and your inner signal comes online. But most people avoid stillness because it forces them to feel. And feeling is the gateway to truth. When you feel deeply, not reactively, but consciously, you process vibration. You transmute energy. You clear distortion. And that process creates coherence. And coherence is what pushes demonic frequencies out of your field. Not force, not fear, Coherence. Have you ever noticed how certain people trigger you into emotional spirals? That's not random. Many people carry frequencies that are designed to provoke you not always intentionally, but energetically. And if you keep reacting to those frequencies, you stay trapped in their field. That's why boundaries are not just emotional, they are vibrational. You don't need to fight people to protect your energy. You just need to stop matching their frequency. The moment you stop resonating with drama, manipulation, or projection, it loses its grip. This is what it means to rise above, not in arrogance, but in vibration. You no longer argue with lies. You no longer explain your truth to confusion. You no longer lower your tone to be understood by distortion. You simply vibrate higher. And that higher vibration doesn't just protect you, it repels what doesn't belong. You become spiritually unpalatable to demons. Not because you're perfect, but because you're clear. Let's talk about clarity. Clarity is one of the highest vibrations you can embody. It cuts through deception. It sharpens discernment. It amplifies intention. And when you live with clarity, you create a field that is difficult to invade. Confusion invites interference, but clarity creates consequence. Entities think twice before approaching someone who knows exactly who they are and what they carry. That's why most attacks begin with confusion, because if they can distort your self-view, they can distort your frequency. We must also address emotional suppression. Many people think that being high vibration means avoiding negative emotions. That's a lie. Demons thrive in suppressed emotion, because what you suppress, you don't process. And what you don't process festers. That festering becomes energetic rot, and that rot attracts lower beings. You must learn to feel deeply and express authentically, not to wallow, but to move energy. Movement is release, and release is protection. Your vibration is not static, it is dynamic. It shifts based on your thoughts, your actions, your environment, your sleep, your food, your relationships. That means you have the power to shift it at will. You can tune your frequency like an instrument. And when you learn how to tune it intentionally, you become a master of your reality. You stop waiting for protection, you become protection. You stop fearing demons because you understand how to become invisible to them. Not through hiding, but through vibrational transcendence. So let me ask you this: what frequency are you living in right now? Not what you wish you were, not what you pretend to be, but what are you actually broadcasting in your quietest moments? In your solitude? In your thoughts about yourself? Because that is the frequency the spirit world responds to. And until you shift it at the root, you will keep attracting the same cycles, the same patterns, and the same shadows, no matter how much spiritual work you do. Are you willing to take full responsibility for your vibration? Are you willing to stop tolerating frequencies you've normalized? Are you willing to become so tuned into truth that demons can no longer find a home in your field? Part 3. Becoming spiritually undetectable to darkness. There is a level of inner power so pure, so steady, so aligned, that demonic forces cannot even perceive you anymore. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to cast them out. You don't even have to acknowledge them. Because at that level of vibration, your presence becomes invisible to them, not because you're hiding, but because you're no longer on their spiritual radar. You've shifted from reaction to resonance, from fear to frequency. That is the secret most spiritual traditions hint at but rarely explain. The goal is not just protection, the goal is transcendence. You transcend demonic interference not by denying its existence, but by mastering your own. And mastery begins with choosing your vibration every single day, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. When the anxiety creeps in, when the doubt whispers again, when the old pain rises, that's the moment of choice. Will you spiral back into the frequency that once enslaved you? Or will you breathe deeper, stand taller, and anchor a new frequency in your body, your thoughts, your space? That choice is what shapes your spiritual ecosystem. Let's be practical. How do you raise your vibration in a way that lasts? First, you stop chasing peak moments and start cultivating consistency. High vibration is not about euphoric highs. It's about stable alignment. You create that by honoring your word, healing your trauma, aligning your habits with your values, and staying connected to your body. Your body is a tuning fork. If you ignore its signals, its fatigue, its cravings, its tension, you disconnect from truth. And that disconnection is where demons enter, not through drama, but through disregard. Awakening is not just a spiritual process. It is a biological one. Your nervous system holds imprints of every vibration you've ever embodied. If your body is still wired for survival, constantly in fight, flight, or freeze, then no matter how spiritual your mind becomes, your field remains vulnerable. That's why true vibration work includes nervous system regulation, breath work, embodiment, grounding. These are not just wellness trends. They are spiritual armor, because a dysregulated body emits incoherent signals, and incoherence breeds instability, and instability attracts interference. Now let's talk about spiritual hygiene, a term thrown around loosely, but rarely understood deeply. Spiritual hygiene is not just about cleansing rituals. It's about energetic boundaries. Do you say yes when you mean no? Do you absorb other people's emotions without filtering? Do you stay in energetic environments that drain you because you don't want to offend anyone? These are the micro habits that weaken your vibration. And the more you compromise your integrity, the more fragmented your field becomes. And fragmentation is a feeding ground for entities. You don't just protect your frequency by shielding, you protect it by aligning. When your thoughts, speech, actions, and energy all point in the same direction, your field becomes sealed. You become a closed circuit of light. And that coherence emits a frequency that repels distortion. Not because you're defending yourself, but because your very being becomes incompatible with lower energies. That is spiritual immunity. Not the absence of darkness, but the presence of sovereign light. Let's be even more radical. Most of the demonic interference people experience is not external. It's internal amplification. What does that mean? It means that demons don't always need to enter your space to affect you. They just need to amplify what's already vibrating inside you. Your hidden shame, your unspoken rage, your suppressed grief. They don't plant seeds, they pour water on what already exists. That's why shadow work is not optional. It is the process of reclaiming every frequency you've disowned so it can no longer be used against you. Have you ever considered that what you avoid emotionally is what you attract spiritually? Avoidance is its own frequency, and it emits weakness. Not because you're weak, but because you're divided. And division is what demons exploit. When you are one person on the outside and another on the inside, your field becomes split. And that split becomes a signal. Demons don't need to find you in your darkness, they find you in your dishonesty. That's why truth is protection. Not just truth spoken, but truth embodied. Let's also address the ego's role in vibration. The ego, when unchecked, lowers your frequency through arrogance, superiority, and control. But here's the twist: demons don't fear ego. They use it. They whisper thoughts that make you feel better than others, more awakened, more advanced, more chosen. And in that illusion of superiority, your vibration begins to rot. Why? Because true high frequency is humble. It's empty of performance, full of presence. The moment you use your awakening as a weapon against others, you descend. And in that descent, they enter. So how do you stay in your highest frequency without becoming delusional? By staying in service. Service is the stabilizer of all energy. When your vibration is aimed not just at your own evolution, but at the healing of others, the protection of truth, the embodiment of love, you become a conduit. And conduits don't get attacked like containers do, because conduits flow. And demons don't linger where energy flows freely. They stagnate. They feed on stuckness. So serve, give, flow. Let your vibration be a blessing, not a performance. This is the sacred paradox. The more you focus on being light, the less you have to fight darkness. Because light is not a mood. It's not a personality. It's a state of being. And that state is cultivated, not inherited. You're not born into high vibration. You build it through choice, through discipline, through devotion. And every day you get to decide, what frequency will I build today? Let's also talk about language. Your words shape your field. Complaining lowers your frequency. Gossip fragments it. Judgment muddies it. But gratitude amplifies it. Prayer purifies it. Authenticity strengthens it. Every word you speak sends out a signature. And the more intentional your language becomes, the more refined your field becomes. You begin to sound like truth, move like peace, radiate like love. And in that resonance, demons become irrelevant. But don't confuse high vibration with constant comfort. Sometimes your highest frequency will require your deepest discomfort. Telling the truth when it's easier to lie. Walking away from relationships that feel safe but aren't aligned. Saying no when you're expected to say yes. These are the moments when your vibration is tested. And how you respond tells the universe and the spirit realm what you're truly aligned with. So let's ask the question that matters most. What are you unwilling to give up that's keeping your vibration low? What thought pattern? What relationship? What habit? What lie? Because until you're willing to release the familiar frequencies, you'll never fully access the divine ones. And you'll stay in this in-between, awakened enough to feel the interference, but not aligned enough to rise above it. That is spiritual purgatory. And many souls live there for lifetimes. But you don't have to. You can choose to rise. Not by ascending out of your body, but by descending into your truth, into your practices, into your power, into your sovereignty. And when you do, your very presence becomes a prayer, a shield, a vibration so steady, so clean, so sharp that anything not rooted in truth simply dissolves. You become the signal, the lighthouse, the frequency that others remember their own vibration by. And that is how you change the world, not by fighting darkness, but by being so lit with light that darkness has nowhere left to hide. So now I ask you, are you willing to become spiritually undetectable to demons? Are you ready to raise your vibration so consistently, so intentionally, that only truth can find you? Are you ready to stop reacting and start resonating? Then stop asking how to protect yourself and start asking, what do I need to release to become untouchable? Because the answer is already inside you, and your vibration is the key.